G'day guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2014, directed by Kevin Smith, and this film is called Tusk. So Tusk opens up with Wallace, who is a podcaster. He's doing a podcast with his best friend, and basically what they do is they document weird things and they make fun of people. So it's kind of a cruel sort of thing they're doing, but it's successful. They've got a huge following and they're always willing to see what they've got. So one day they come across this internet sensation of a guy humiliating himself, and this is immediately gaining the attention of these podcasters, and the only problem is they have to go to Canada to do it. So Wallace decides to leave, he goes to Canada, and he realises that he can't in fact interview this guy because this guy's had an accident, another accident. So he's left stranded in Canada without anything. He doesn't want to return back home without something to tell his viewers or his listeners. And so he is desperate. He wants something weird, and he comes across this board that has a note pinned to it asking for some company. Now this old guy who's written the note has a lot of stories to tell. He was at sea for most of his life, so he's had a lot of adventures, but the problem is he's got no one to tell them to. So he's advertising for an overnight stay at his luxurious mansion with tea and biscuits and all that kind of stuff, and all they have to do is spend the evening listening to his stories. So Wallace sees this as the perfect opportunity. He goes to the guy's house, and this is where he realises that he has sinister intentions. Now he doesn't only want to tell stories, he also wants to live one of his fantasies, and that involves Wallace, and that involves an animal. So it's very morbid, and what happens at that point on and whether or not Wallace can be saved is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Tusk. I really enjoyed this film. Now a lot of people hated the movie because it was very different. It didn't make a lot of sense. It was very silly. But this is a horror comedy, so go into it with the right expectations and you could come away from it being pleasantly surprised, especially if you're one of those people who want something different. Now in the world of horror, we all know that a lot of stuff has been recycled. It's all very generic. A lot of people complain about it, yet when you get a film that is very different, people complain still that they didn't understand it, that not all the answers were, that their questions were answered. And so these are the same people who hate generic horror films, who hate predictable horror films. So the horror genre, although it is getting very repetitive and it is struggling a little bit, I think they can't win either way. They get something different, people complain. They get something very generic and familiar, people complain. So I think that's the reason why a lot of people didn't like Tusk. It is very silly, but as I said, it stays true to what the film is. It's a light-hearted horror comedy, and for that I went into it expecting that, and that's exactly what I got. I thought it was a very well-made film. I think it was better than his other movie, Red State, which I will review very soon. It has the same sort of element where it does go very crazy towards the end, but I thought this one was handled a lot better. Now to start off with Wallace, played by Justin Long. I think he's a very good actor. I liked him in Jeepers Creepers. I thought his character was very strange, and the whole film has a strange connection to it. It feels like you hate this certain individual, but then you like him. And the chemistry between the main guy and the villain is that you think that the villain hates this guy, but there's a strange sense of bonding between the two. So you feel very uncomfortable. There's a strong level of discomfort in the film that I thought was very unique, and I wasn't expecting what I got. I knew that it was going to be a crazy film, but it was a little extra put into it for good measure. Now Justin Long's character, as I said, very funny. The dialogue was very well written, and I thought Justin Long had a lot of area to really showcase his talent as an actor in this sort of subgenre of horror. Now we all know that he's been in horror films before, but this one is a little bit different. I thought his character was very arrogant, very self-centered. He's doing everything for his progression in life, whether that be laughing at someone else's expense. There's kind of like a bully, and initially you hate him, but then when he goes through all this horrific stuff, you get a connection with him and you wanted to see him get through. And a lot of these films, they don't really put attention into the characters, therefore you don't really care about them. When the horror element hits, you don't care. But this movie surprisingly had characters that you cared about, that you initially hated at the start. Now the guy who played Howard, who was the old guy, I think his name's Michael Parks, he appears to be a favourite with Kevin Smith. He was also the villain of Red State. He was also in a lot of Quentin Tarantino films. So he plays this character very well, and I thought he was funny. He was pathetic in some areas and he was scary in others, and there were just some scenes in the film that had me laughing hysterically. And for a horror comedy, that really needed that. I thought it was a fine mix of comedy and horror. Neither one really takes centre stage, and that's exactly what you want. Now the subject matter is very morbid. As I said, a lot of people aren't going to like that, and I felt that in the last quarter of the film where everything kicks into gear, some of it worked, some of it didn't. I thought the ending was a little bit of a cop-out. It was kind of very convenient for what the film wanted to be, and I also thought the costume design was a little bit iffy, although you really couldn't do too much better with it, but I thought that it looked kind of silly. But it stays true to the light-hearted approach. It is a very morbid film, it's a very shocking film, but at the same time, it's very entertaining, and it doesn't lose sight of the entertaining nature that the film wants. So the supporting cast, now my biggest problem with the acting was Haley Joel Osment's character. He plays the partner of Justin Long's character in the podcasting. I thought his character was irritating. It felt like a very unnecessary element to the film, where you've got when Wallace goes to Canada, and then all of a sudden you've got these two, Wallace's girlfriend and Wallace's best friend, they're searching for him. And when it cuts back to the moments that feature Haley Joel Osment's character, I thought that was a distraction. I didn't really care what was going on, and I didn't really feel the film needed that. It didn't need people seeking, his best friend, although obviously in reality you would find, you would be worried about your friend, but I just thought that moment of the film, that aspect of the film could have been forgotten, and it would have been a lot better, because there are moments, although the continuity of the film is very good, there are moments, there are little pockets in the film where it does halt because of Haley Joel Osment. You feel that he's a cardboard cutout of a character, he's irritating, and he doesn't really have any redeemable quality, and it doesn't really progress the film in a very positive manner. So that was my only problem with the movie. I thought this was very entertaining. The script was very, very well done. The cinematography was very eerie. I loved it. And also the soundtrack was very, very good. So I think this is Kevin Smith's best film. As I said, a lot of people are going to dislike it because it is very silly, very unique. But if you like your movies that do breathe fresh life into the subgenre of horror comedy, then I would highly recommend Tusk. I really enjoyed it, and as a result, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.